For more on these earnings from Boeing and everything else for the company, and maybe the markets if there's time, Thomas Hayes, founder, chairman, and managing member of Great Hill Capital. Good to see you again.
Great to be here, Phil. Thanks for having me.
This earnings beat, I'm not surprised because a lot of this was, this just happened, so the earnings aren't going to incorporate all of this. But the issue is the forecast going forward, right? Look, I want the company to be successful. It's in my hometown. There's nobody that wants the company to fail, but it seems like every opportunity they get to kind of rebuild trust or fix this or fix that, there's been something that's just gone amiss. What do you think's happening?
Yeah, it was years of kind of a rotten, lackluster culture, Phil, I think is the simple answer. But like Mel Brooks said in The History of the World in 1981, his film, it's good to be the king. And Boeing operates in a duopoly. And as your previous speaker said, they do have a backlog of over 5,600 commercial planes. That amounts to $520 billion in orders. And what we saw in Q4 is more of the same. They beat on the top line. They beat on the bottom line. Operating margins are improving. They generated $3 billion of free cash flow for the quarter, $4.4 billion for the year. And they deferred guidance. They did not suspend guidance. It would make zero sense for them to come out with guidance when they're still awaiting what will be a financial hit for sure from the disaster that happened on Alaska Airlines.
The CEO, Calhoun, has been under fire, and I'm sure you know his history, but I think he's an ex-GE person, basically a cost cutter, a financial manager, if you will, not an engineer, right? And that you would think Boeing would have. How would you grade management on this current crisis?
Well, the problems started before Calhoun, so Calhoun has come in kind of fixing the legacy problems, trying to make things better. He's failed at that. He took ownership of the errors in the conference call. He suspended guidance. He showed humility. He's taking all the actions. He believes the investigation is narrowing quickly and will conclude in relatively short order. That implies we'll be able to quantify the magnitude of the fine and/or penalties and/or costs to the company. And I would imagine sometime after that, they'll be able to come out with renewed guidance. But the CFO did in fact say that what they had previously guided to generating $10 billion a year of free cash flow by 2025 or 2026 was still on track. It would just be towards the latter end of the range.
And people forget that, Boeing, yes, they make commercial jets, but they also have a huge military division as well with a whole separate revenue. But overall, as a company, what would you say the health of the company financially be? And would you buy the stock right here? I think it's trading in the low 200s or so.
Yeah, we don't own Boeing, but we were looking at it today, and we do think that if we had to be a buyer or seller, we'd be a buyer of Boeing here, taking a long-term view. I can't tell you what's going to happen in the next 2 weeks or the next 2 months, but over the next 2 years, I think it's going to be much higher, and I do think it represents a value, particularly because competition is for suckers, and they don't have any. I mean, basically, it's Airbus and Boeing, and they've got huge hundreds of billions of dollars of backlog. So that's going to continue for the foreseeable future. You're seeing international travel just starting to tick up in China, which is going to be a huge source of demand moving forward. So I think it's a good play from that standpoint. And in the short term, you'll have your noise about the fines and about the problems that they're fixing from years of neglect.
I mean, you're right. If you want to invest in the aviation industry and sort of travel as a whole, Boeing is the elephant sort of in the room. I suppose you could buy hotels, you could buy other airlines. I don't know if you're looking at those industries, but how would you play it if you were interested in this particular industry?
Yeah, I think Boeing is the play. I mean, that's your safe bet. Certainly the hotels have had a move. Some of the online travel agencies like Booking and Expedia might have some value in them. But I think Boeing at these levels represents a nice value on the recovery. We had a play with Rolls-Royce, which did engine hours servicing, which was a multi-bagger off the pandemic lows. That probably has a little bit more upside over the coming years with the new CEO and cash flow generation. But I think Boeing's your safer bellwether bet.
Love it. I'm with you on it. Before we let you go, I can't have you on the show and not talk about what happened today in the stock market. We had one of the biggest drops, at least for the NASDAQ, in some time. I think a lot of people were caught, I don't want to use the word off guard, but I guess extremely optimistic of what might happen. I'm curious your reaction on what the Fed did and where you think we go from here.
Well, this is in tune with Powell's history. He stayed easy too long, and he'll stay tight too long. Nothing new there. But at the end of the day, the difference between March and May is immaterial. The economy is still humming along. You just don't want to take it much further than that because we're 300 basis points too restrictive. If you back out Fed funds rate minus core PCE or core PCE annualized, which is now under 2%, you're getting to the point that the bigger risk is now deflation versus inflation. Inflation is easy to solve. Deflation is very hard and costly to solve. So he's walking on a tightrope here. He's decided to walk a little further on the tightrope rather than declare victory and let things rip. But I understand why he wants to keep that quiver in his back pocket. However, I think if he gets too cute with it, it could be dangerous. So generally constructive. Earnings are doing fine. The economy's doing well. But Powell needs to be wary of the lagged effects and not wait too long to make things slightly less restrictive.
It's amazing how in just 6 months we went from they're not raising it enough to now we've got to do the other thing, which is cut rates. I guess we'll see what happens in the next few weeks and months. Thomas Hayes, always good to see you.
Thanks so much, Phil.